when you look out a window, there is this deeply ingrained assumption that the universe you're seeing is perfectly synchronized with your perception of it.
Right. It feels completely instantaneous.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all know conceptually about the speed of light.
Yeah.
But on a visceral level, you assume the car driving by or like the bird taking off from a branch is a live, real-time feed.
Oh, for sure. We treat our own perspective as this absolute objective coordinate system.
But what if it's not?
I mean, it's a necessary cognitive comfort, honestly. If we constantly process the universe as this fundamentally out-of-sync delayed transmission, navigating daily life would be, well, it would be paralyzing.
Right.
But the moment you strip away that comfort, and you look at the actual mathematical architecture of reality, you run into a very serious problem regarding how we define the space around us.
And that is exactly what we are plunging into today. So welcome to the Deep Dive. We are exploring the 161st installment of a really legendary, intensely analytical blog series today.
Yeah, the 161st theme. It's a dense one.
It really is. And the core mission for us today is to unpack this profound claim the author makes. They argue that the very concept of an inertial frame in physics, it isn't just a single monolithic idea.
Right. There are actually several distinct operational varieties of an inertial frame.
Yes, operational varieties. And the argument here is that by mixing them up, by blurring the lines between pure mathematical models and messy physical reality, we might have accidentally infected, like, a century of physics with a foundational bug.
What's fascinating here is how the author frames this whole systemic miscommunication. The suggestion is basically that modern physics effectively downloaded the wrong operating system for reality.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, and to understand how that allegedly happened, we need to look at the evolution of how we map space and time. So we'll start with the absolute baseline of classical physics and then move all the way into human perception and, surprisingly, psychoanalysis.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because if we want to understand how the system broke, we have to look at the original code first. And that original code is the Newtonian frame.
Right. Good old Isaac Newton.
Yeah. And for you listening, we're not just talking about the apple falling from the tree here. We're talking about how Newton defined the actual theater where physics happens.
And that theater is defined by absolute space and absolute time.
Which means what exactly in this context?
Well, the most critical feature of this first operational variety, the Newtonian frame, is that it is a purely mathematical, abstract space. It operates on this assumption of what is called action at a distance.
Action at a distance, okay.
Right. So in this framework, information doesn't have a travel time. A gravitational effect, or just knowing the physical state of an object, is acquired instantly across the entire universe.
I mean, it's essentially magic.
Basically.
Or, to put it in a more modern context for you, the Newtonian frame is like playing a video game entirely offline.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like all the processing happens locally, in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
The physics engine renders everything perfectly. When you move your character, the environment responds with absolutely zero ping, zero lag.
Zero lag, exactly.
And because everything is instantaneous, you can treat a massive rigid body and a microscopic point mass basically the exact same way on a Cartesian graph. I mean, the math is pristine.
That analogy holds up incredibly well because it highlights the utility of the system. I mean, offline rendering works flawlessly if you're just trying to predict where a cannonball will land, right?
Or mapping a basic planetary orbit.
Exactly. But the friction begins when we introduce James Clerk Maxwell into the equation.
Maxwell. Here comes the lag.
Right. Because once electromagnetic fields enter the picture and we accept the finite speed of light as the universe's absolute speed limit, well, that offline, instantaneous environment just shatters.
Right, because now you've taken that offline console and you've plugged it into the internet. Suddenly, server lag is a real fundamental property of your universe.
Yes. In a Maxwellian framework, which is the second variety we're looking at, instantaneous knowledge is just impossible.
Right.
And this forces a massive paradigm shift. You can no longer just plot an object on an abstract X and Y graph and call it a day.
Because the information takes time to get to you.
Exactly. The speed of the observer, what the author calls the camera eye, and the speed of the object relative to the electromagnetic field, they become completely unavoidable variables.
So the Newtonian frame was just like a mental operating system constructed by the human mind.
Right. It was a brilliant tool, but it failed to capture the physical reality of how information actually travels.
Okay, but here's where I want to push back a little, though.
Sure, go for it.
We all accept that light has a speed limit, Right, that part isn't controversial.
Mm-hmm.
But how does acknowledging that delay fundamentally change the definition of an inertial frame?
That's the big question.
Right, because an inertial frame is supposed to be a rigid coordinate system. It's a way to measure physics at rest or in uniform motion. How does this camera eye thing change the actual geometry of that?
Well, this is where we shift from a spatial-first perspective to an information-first perspective. Let's look at the third variety, the camera eye frame. Because the speed of light is finite, the reality you perceive is not a snapshot of a single moment in time.
Okay, wait. What do you mean?
Well, imagine you are looking at a large, long box sitting right in front of you.
Okay, I've got the box in my mind's eye. It's sitting on a table.
Perfect. Now, if the light from that box hits your retina or a pinhole camera at the exact same millisecond, let's call that moment t equals 0.
E equals 0. Got it.
The light carrying the visual information of the front of the box had a shorter distance to travel than the light from the back of the box.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So to arrive at my pupil at the exact same moment of t equals 0, the light from the front might have left at, say, t equals negative 0.5, but the light from the back corner had to leave at t equals negative 1.
Precisely. You are not looking at the box in the present. You are looking at a past light cone.
A past light cone? That sounds like sci-fi.
I know, but it's just the mechanical reality. The light arriving at your eye is a literal collage of different moments in the past.
That is wild.
So, to figure out the actual objective size, shape, and location of that box in physical space, you cannot trust the image hitting your retina.
Because it's distorted by time.
Yes. You have to calculate the delay for every single point of incoming light and mathematically reconstruct the entire object backwards.
Okay, that is just wild to think about mechanically.
Yeah.
It means an inertial frame isn't just a passive stage where things happen.
No, not at all.
It becomes this, like, retroactive information processing system. You are literally doing historical reconstruction just to establish the present geometry of the room you're sitting in.
And that cognitive requirement is exactly why the author categorizes the camera eye as a completely distinct operational variety of an inertial frame.
Because it's doing something totally different than Newton's grid.
Exactly. Newton's system was about putting objects into a pre-existing space. The camera eye system is about receiving delayed data and actually building the space out of it.
But, okay, the universe isn't just one observer staring at a box. We exist in a universe full of observers. So, if I'm reconstructing my reality based on delayed light, and you're over there reconstructing your reality based on delayed light, how do those two frames interact without just breaking the physics engine entirely?
That requires another operational variety. The text refers to this fourth type as the Galileo or Dewar frame.
Right, the mutual perspective thing.
Exactly. This framework is entirely based on the complex relationship between the viewer and the viewed.
And the sources gave some really vivid historical examples for this.
They did.
They bring up Galileo standing on a stationary beach, right, watching a ship sail out into the water, while the people on the ship are simultaneously looking back at the beach.
A classic relativity example.
Yeah, and then they also mention Albrecht Dürer, the Renaissance artist.
Right, drawing the reclining model.
Yeah, he's looking through this fixed physical grid to draw her.
The Dürer example is incredibly illustrative here, because the artist is looking through this rigid grid, actively mapping a three-dimensional complex form onto a flat two-dimensional surface.
Right. But the mechanism that makes this mutual perspective function, the thing that keeps the mathematics of the beach and the ship, or the artist and the model, from just collapsing into paradoxes, is the necessity of a third term.
The umpire.
Yes, the umpire.
I love that metaphor.
It's brilliant. The author uses the metaphor of a Wimbledon center court umpire. The umpire sits up in that high chair directly over the net, observing both tennis players simultaneously.
Right, they are anchored outside the individual relative movements of the players.
Exactly. Another metaphor used in the text is a child anchoring the relationship of a married couple. It's that necessary middle ground.
But mechanically speaking, why is this third term absolutely required? Like, why can't the ship and the beach just observe each other directly and calculate the relativity between them?
Because they need a medium.
Right. What physical reality does this umpire actually represent?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, in physics terms, that third frame represents the base electromagnetic space itself.
The actual space the light is moving through. Yes, it is the medium, the actual physical environment. If you just take two isolated bodies moving in a void, you only have pure mathematical relativity.
Which is back to Newton's offline video game.
Exactly. But physical reality doesn't happen in a void. Observation is a two-way street, and the street itself is a fundamental, active participant in the event.
Okay, so if we look at the board right now, we have Newton's pristine instantaneous mathematical space.
Variety 1.
We have Maxwell introducing the speed limit of light.
Yeah.
Variety 2.
Yep.
We have the camera eye forcing us to retroactively reconstruct our geometry based on that lag. Variety 3.
Right.
And we have the umpire, the actual electromagnetic medium anchoring these mutual perspectives. Variety 4.
You've got it.
It feels like a very complete logical progression of how to map reality.
It is a complete progression, which is exactly why the author takes such fierce issue with what happened next in the history of physics.
The plot thickens.
This brings us to the fifth variety and the critique of the Einsteinian framework.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. And I want to set some guardrails for you as we get into this.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. The author's critique of Albert Einstein is highly controversial. So our goal today isn't to validate or debunk Einstein's entire body of work, right? We aren't taking a side on the ultimate nature of relativity.
No, not at all.
Our mission is just to impartially break down the mechanical argument the author is making in the source material. Because the logic bug they are pointing out is fascinating, regardless of where you stand on the physics consensus.
And the logic bug the author points out is what they call a flawed idea and a false image.
Strong words.
Very. The core argument is that Einstein took the Newtonian frame, that absolute abstract mathematical space, and tried to merge it with the Maxwellian reality of delayed light.
Okay.
But in doing so, he stripped away the umpire.
You fired the umpire.
He fired the umpire. He took the medium entirely out of the equation.
Just abstracted it away.
Completely. He abstracted reality down to just two isolated entities moving relative to each other.
Like the train and the track.
Exactly. Think of the classic relativistic thought experiment. A train moving along a track. The Einsteinian framework looks at the inertial frame of the train and the inertial frame of the track, but it fundamentally ignores the external electromagnetic environment.
The third term.
Right. The third term that the light is actually traveling through to relay the information between the two.
The text actually uses the word laziness to describe this abstraction, which is, that's a massive accusation to level at the foundational math of modern physics.
It's a huge claim.
But what is the specific mechanical proof the author offers to back up this claim of laziness? Like, where is the smoking gun?
The author points directly to the famous Michelson-Morley interferometer experiment.
Context for this one.
Right. So this was the late 19th century experiment designed to detect the ether, the theorized physical medium of space.
The umpire.
Exactly. It worked by splitting a beam of light, sending the two beams down arms of identical lengths at right angles to each other, reflecting them back, and looking for an interference pattern.
And an interference pattern would prove the Earth was moving through a physical medium.
Yes.
And famously, they found no interference pattern, which set the stage for special relativity to say, hey, there is no ether, there is no absolute medium.
Exactly. But the author's critique zeroes in on a fatal flaw in the experiment's methodology.
Okay, what's the flaw?
The Michelson-Morley setup used light itself to calibrate the baseline length of its own arms before the experiment even began.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm getting this.
Yeah.
They used the speed of light to calibrate the instrument that was then going to measure if the speed of light changed.
That is the crux of the argument.
Wow.
By using the phenomenon you are testing to set the parameters of the test, you've baked your assumption into the hardware.
It's totally circular logic.
The author argues that by glossing over this circular logic and subsequently dropping the third term, the electromagnetic space itself, Einstein created a foundational OS bug.
You mixed the frameworks?
Right. He took the math designed for instantaneous magic, forced it onto a universe with a strict speed limit, and completely forgot the umpire that grounds the whole system.
Okay, if we entertain this premise that this is a glaring systemic logic bug, it raises an incredibly obvious question.
How did everyone miss it?
Exactly. Why did an entire century of the most brilliant minds on the planet just go along with it? How does a whole scientific field miss the fact that they are running incompatible software?
To answer that, the author actually pulls us completely out of the realm of theoretical physics.
And plunges us into French psychoanalysis.
Naturally. Specifically, the work of Jacques Lacan.
I have to admit, when I was reading the sources, the jump from Michelson-Morley to French psychoanalysis gave me absolute whiplash.
It's quite the pivot.
But the framework they use here, Lacan's RSI model, It actually maps onto the physics perfectly.
It really does.
So let's break down RSI, because it is the key to understanding why the confusion happened.
Right. RSI stands for the real, the symbolic, and the imaginary. These are the three registers of human reality, according to Lacan.
Okay, let's start with the real.
In this context, the real isn't just everyday life. It represents the actual physical universe in its rawest, most unadulterated form.
The messy stuff.
Yes, it is the chaotic, objective existence of atoms, photons, and the electromagnetic medium,
Yeah.
the umpire.
Right.
Crucially, the real is ultimately unknowable and ungraspable in its pure form.
Because the moment we try to grasp it, we have to use tools. Which brings us to the second register, the symbolic.
Correct. The symbolic is the realm of language, of laws, of mathematics, and coordinate systems.
Like Newton's math.
Exactly. Newton's pristine, absolute mathematical space lives entirely within the symbolic. It is an abstract structure we invented to map the real.
The map is not the territory. The symbolic is the map.
Spot on. And finally, we have the imaginary. This is the realm of human perception, of images, of the mind's eye.
So this is the camera iframe.
Yes. When we talked earlier about your brain taking delayed light and retroactively reconstructing a box so you can perceive it, that cognitive processing happens in the imaginary. It is the interface we create to navigate the real.
And to visualize how these three registers interact, the author brings in a topology concept.
Yeah.
The Borromean rings.
Right.
The sources even mention visualizing these in like 3D Blender software, which is a neat mental image. If you picture three interlocking rings, one red, one green, one blue, they represent the real, the symbolic, and the imaginary.
And the mechanical property of Borromean rings that makes this metaphor work is that no two single rings are actually linked directly to each other.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they only hold together as a complete trio. If you sever just one single ring, the other two completely disconnect and the entire structure falls apart.
Okay, so applying that mechanism back to the author's critique of physics, what exactly got severed?
What got severed was the proper relationship between the registers. The author's grand conclusion is that physicists took a purely symbolic tool, Newton's mathematically perfect but physically unreal coordinate system, and carelessly dragged it into the imaginary and the real.
Oh, I see. They took the perfectly clean, offline video game code, the symbolic, and tried to run it directly on the laggy, messy online servers, the real.
Exactly.
Without rewriting the core engine to account for ping.
And when the mathematics started producing weird, paradoxical results, instead of realizing they were using an incompatible, purely symbolic OS, they just bent their understanding of space and time to force the old math to fit.
They severed the umpire.
They severed the umpire, the anchor of the real, and allowed the symbolic to completely override physical reality.
So what does this all mean for us? It means that an inertial frame isn't just an arbitrary set of X and Y axes drawn on a chalkboard.
No, it's much more than that.
It fundamentally depends on the operational reality you're dealing with. It depends on whether information is instant or if it has a hard speed limit.
Right.
It depends on whether you are manipulating pure symbols in your head or if you are catching actual delayed light rays with your retina and reconstructing the past.
This raises an important question, though. How often do we confuse the mathematical models we invent with the messy reality we actually live in?
All the time, probably.
It reminds us that the language and the mathematics we use to describe the universe are incredibly powerful, but they are still just tools. They are a symbolic operating system we download into our minds to make sense of the chaos.
We have to be fiercely vigilant not to confuse the tool we use to measure the universe with the universe itself.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a profoundly mind-bending journey, linking 19th century physics with 20th century psychoanalysis. But before we sign off, we want to leave you with something to mull over on your own time.
Yeah, think about this. If the finite speed of light fundamentally forces your brain to operate as a camera eye, meaning you are constantly reconstructing the past just to synthesize your present reality, then your literal physical perspective on the world is mathematically unique to your exact spatial coordinates.
Because no one else is standing exactly where you are.
Right. No one else is receiving that exact collage of delayed information.
Which raises an incredible question about your own life. What other absolute truths that you rely on, in your career, in your personal relationships, and your understanding of the world around you are actually just retroactive reconstructions built on delayed, filtered information?
If the greatest physicists of the last century can accidentally mistake a mathematical symbol for absolute reality, how often do we do the exact same thing in our daily lives without even realizing it?
It definitely changes the way you look out a window. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the frames you use to view your reality.